Hey creative friends, welcome to my channel, and in this video we're going to talk about the different types of shelf-stable milk that you can buy. Now, first of all, I want to say, yes, you can get liquid milks that you can have on your shelf that are shelf-stable. And I just want to start off by saying that does not mean that canning milk. You see videos for people canning milk, and I know I'm going to get some hate for this, but canning milk is not an approved or considered safe product or process. In fact, canning any dairy is not an approved or considered to be a safe process. And the reason is, I'm just going to tell you really quick, the reason is, so for them to can this type of milk that you can get in a carton or even these ones in cans, there's a process that has to be done that can be done commercially that cannot be reproduced in the home kitchen. And if you don't think about that, like, why shouldn't we be able to do everything in the kitchen? Well, how long have we had freeze-dried foods? And it's only relatively recent that they've come out with a home freeze dryer. So think about that when you're thinking about canning dairy. They can do it. We can't. Maybe hopefully one day there will be a process that we can. But if the reason is, these milks, particularly the canned ones, have been reduced down. Not necessarily this, but there's a process that they do to make this shelf stable. The thing is, milk and dairy products have fat in them, and they are low acid food. So being a low acid food, they have to be processed in a pressure canner. The fat, though, creates, like, it will coat the spores and the other things in the milk, so that creates like a little jacket around those things that help prevent those things from being penetrated with the proper amount of heat for the right amount of time. So if you were actually going to can milk or dairy in the pressure canner, you would have to process it for so long that you would actually just destroy the product. So, you see videos of people canning them, but honestly, I've seen a lot of those videos, and if there is, I haven't seen any, but I've never seen a video where someone takes a jar off their shelf that's been sitting there for a couple years and crack the top of it and drink it. I've never seen that. So just because you see someone do something doesn't mean that it's safe. Now, that being said, I know people aren't going to like to hear that, but that's just the way it is. So I will buy things that I can have on my shelf that are safe for long-term storage, and I know they're going to be good, and they're not going to make anybody sick. So, interesting, I'm going to cover the liquid products first, and I have a little print-off because the canned milk is really interesting. But this is actually, it's liquid. This is, I got this at the Dollar Tree for $1.25. Now, you can get boxed milk. There's a company called Gosner that's been making it for a really long time, but I was super surprised to find this at the Dollar Tree, and it is produced and packaged in the U.S., and it is 2% reduced fat milk. Now, if I opened this right away and tasted it, it probably wouldn't be great because it's warm, but if you put it in the fridge and let it get cold like you do your gallon milk and top the top, it's 2% milk. That's what it is. So this is really handy. And this one here says it's good until October of 23. So about a year. So that's kind of handy to have on hand. So if you just want regular milk, this would be the way to go. Probably is a little bit more expensive than your gallons of milk, although the way things are going right now, I think the $1.25 for 32 ounces was not bad. So there's that liquid milk. Now, canned milk, this is super cool. There's evaporated milk and sweetened condensed milk. Now these are kind of the same. They're like little siblings, okay? So evaporated milk and sweetened condensed milk have a long history actually in our culture. And I'm going to read a little bit about this. So evaporated milk started because a guy named Borden, if you recognize that name, he was actually on I'll read it. So, let me read this part first. Evaporated and condensed milk are two types of concentrated milk from which the water has been removed. And this is from encyclopedia.com, so giving them credit. Evaporated milk is concentrated to 1/2 or less of its original bulk by evaporation under pressures and temperatures without the addition of sugar, and usually contains a specified amount of milk, fat, and solids. So that would be all your information. It's a lot of information on that label. Anyway, this gives regular evaporated, the shelf life that differs with the fat content, so it can be up to 15 months shelf life on a can. Not a bad deal. Now, condensed milk is essentially evaporated milk with sugar added. So the milk is canned for consumer consumption and commercial use in baking, and this product has a shelf life of usually about 2 years. So that's kind of cool. So the history was in 1852, a dairy farmer named Gale Borden was on a ship headed home to the United States from the Great Expedition, and then, I gotta get to page 2, there was rough seas, so they had rough seas, and it made the cows so seasick they couldn't be milked. And then he noticed that the babies were going hungry, and some were starving because they didn't have milk. And so he wondered how he could fix that problem. The other thing was, it also was important not just for the sea trips, but it was a problem not even just for that, but also because at that time milk was shipped in unsanitary oak barrels, and it spoiled quickly. And if you know a dairy farmer and you know how sanitary all their stuff has to be, that's a big difference from the way it used to be. But anyway, when he came home, he did a bunch of stuff and a lot of research, and he determined that this is about 87% water, but if he evaporated it off, he was able to create this product that could be canned. And then there's a whole bunch more history on that. But the thing that's really cool is that when the Civil War outbreak, when they had the outbreak in the Civil War, this proved to be a great thing because they ordered this to go with the troops because they could drink it. It was super sweet, so that answered that sweet tooth. It was filling, and it gave them energy, and it was just kind of a morale builder. So they actually, at the height of the war, Borden's Illinois plant was annually producing 300,000 gallons of condensed milk. So that's where that comes from. I just thought that was interesting and I wanted to share. But I'm going to do some recipes using condensed milk. There's some really, it's super sweet, so most of this stuff is, a dessert type recipe. Now, with evaporated milk, you can actually just add this to about 50-50 with water and milk and have a can of this and 50-50 like with water, and then you can just have regular milk. So if you want to have liquid milk on your shelf, this is a good way to do it because it's concentrated, doesn't take up that much space, and it can be converted into regular milk. Now, here's the cool ones. Instant powdered milk versus milk powder, and this is a can. And I do want to say you can buy instant dry milk. Is different than instant, or you can buy instant non-fat dry milk versus non-fat milk powder. So you can get it in boxes, you can get it in cans, both of these you can. But let me talk about milk powder first. So milk powder is exactly what it says. It has milk that has been, of course there's fat removed so it doesn't go rancid, but it is literally basically dehydrated down to a powder. Now this isn't as popular as instant milk, and I'll tell you why. Because this has to be reconstituted in hot water because it's so dense. Hang on, let me get some and I'll see if I can show you the difference. Okay, I'm not sure how well you're going to see this, but if you look, do you see this is the dried milk and this is the instant? And I don't know how well you can see, but the little instant milk have like bigger little puffy granules, and this is more of a legitimate kind of a dense powder. So I wanted you to see that. Now the thing is, milk powder, like I said, is just flat out dried milk, and it's made into a powder. So because it's dense and dry, it has to be reconstituted in hot water. So you'd reconstitute it, you'd put it in the fridge, and basically it makes up milk. But if you're looking for whole milk, it's not going to taste the same because this is almost like a very low fat milk. So be careful with that. And also when this is non-fat, so it's going to be like a non-fat milk. And just a little side note, when we lived in Japan back in the early 80s on the base, we were like the first ones on the southern base of Sasebo. In fact, they had just finished building the base housing. We were like one of the first families to move in there. Well, their Navy Exchange couldn't get fresh milk because everything had to be sent over from the States. So what they would get, it was called reconstituted milk, and you'd get it in these, it was frozen because you know they could freeze it. And what it was milk powder that had been reconstituted, but they would add in, if you read the ingredients, coconut oil that would give it that thicker kind of whole milk sense. So we would get these frozen cartons and take them home and thaw them in our fridge. That's how we got our milk. So anyway, non-fat milk powder is legitimately powder. Now, you can also get the instant non-fat milk, and that's a lot lighter. It's doesn't weigh as much. You can tell it's not as dense. And what they do with that is when they're making the milk powder, there's a process that they do that actually just kind of turns the milk into like a steam or a mist, and it's frozen, kind of freeze dried. And so they're like little, they kind of pop like little popcorn pieces. So they're this very light, these little guys, instead of being as dense as a powder. The difference is milk powder is going to take up a whole lot less shelf space than the dry milk because it's all puffed up. And if you look, I opened one of these. In this box, there are 3 of these. One of these will make 1 quart. So that box will make 3 quarts. This 5-pound bag, I got it at our local, I know I've talked about the chef store that we have. It used to be Cash and Carry, now it's a chef store. But basically your restaurant supply stores have this because it's used a lot in baking. And this 5-pound bag was $19. And it says to make this, it's got it broken down to the quart and everything. But this bag, a 5-pound bag of this powder mixed into 5 gallons plus 3 quarts, plus 1 3/4 cups of water, will make that much. Like that's 5 gallons plus 3 quarts. So that's basically almost 6 gallons of milk out of this one bag for 19 bucks, as opposed to this little package of 3 individual packages that make a quart. And look at the difference. Like you can store a way lot more. You can also buy this in cans. And if you want canned stuff, get it from Thrive. Really great. I'm actually a Thrive person, but I'm not active. So if you want to buy Thrive from an active distributor, check out Linda over at Linda's Pantry or Lisa over at Sutton's Days. They're active Thrive distributors, and they can get you can get it by the can. So that's good. The other thing you're going to see in the stores, and this one's a chocolate flavored, but you can also get something, look out for low-fat milk alternative. Milk alternatives are not like milk. It's an alternative, and if you know what Tang orange drink is, it's kind of like your Tang to orange juice. This is like your Tang to milk. It's not, it tastes like it, but it is not a full milk. However, it's a good little thing to have around. This one was a chocolate one, really good in your coffee, makes it like flavored. But pay attention if you're getting milk alternative. Now, I use the dry milk powder in all of my bread making. It's wonderful. I don't know what I'm going to do with this instant milk now that I've opened it, but my goal is to do recipes using the different types of milk for you. And so I'm going to do a couple of recipes for the shelf stable using dried milk powder. So I'm going to get to those recipes now, but I wanted to give you kind of a quick little go over of the types of shelf stable milk that you can have in your pantry that are safe for you to have, they're good for long term, and there's different ways to use all of them. So I prefer to have the milk powder and of course my evaporated, my condensed milk, because that's what I use for baking. And if push comes to shove one day, I would rather, and look at this, I would rather just reconstitute some dried milk. What's the ingredients? Milk. That's the only ingredient is milk. So there you go. So I hope you got a little good information about this. Now let me get on to making a shelf-stable video using some milk powder. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.